Hello and welcome back to Student Tutorials. In today's tutorial we're going to be teaching you the basics to create a vectorial drawing in Inkscape. So when you first open up Inkscape, this is the screen you're going to be met with. So it can be a bit overwhelming as you'll see there are lots of different components and tools along all the tabs here. But we're going to go take you through all the essential ones in today's video and the next. Each of the commands you see in all these tabs also have corresponding keyboard shortcuts, so I'm going to put up on screen any of the keyboard shortcuts that I'm using throughout. So what we're actually going to draw is a breadboard based on the ones you see in your labs. So it should look something like this in the picture I've got up in the right here. So we're going to create a vectorial drawing of that. So first thing we're going to do is if you want to change the orientation of your page beforehand, I've used Command-Shift-D here or Control-Shift-D. You'll see that it's got options to change from A4 to A5. You can change the orientation of the page, you can change the width and height. I'm going to leave it to the default settings here though. So I'm just going to close this tab. To zoom in or zoom out, you just use your mouse or your trackpad. And you can also zoom in or zoom out using Shift plus to zoom in, or Shift minus to zoom out. You can also go to your previous zooms using the grab accent on your keyboard. Or to go forward again, you can use Shift and grab, and this just allows you to go back to the view you were using before. So the first thing we're going to do to create our breadboard is we're going to create a rectangle. So if you see at the bottom there, we have a selection of colours. I'm going to pick one of the lighter greys here, just to match the picture I've taken. There we go. And you can see there's a rectangle tool on the left, or you can press R. So I've just pressed R, and I'm going to create a rectangle about this big. Don't worry too much about the sizing, you can always change that. And then press Escape twice to exit the rectangle tool. So if you click on this once again, you'll see here that it gives you the option to change the colour if you want to again. Also note here the layer. If you look at the bottom, it says this rectangle is part of layer 1. So you'll see here that we're going to have various different layers throughout our image. If we were to create a layer on top of this would place all our shapes on top of the grey box. So it's very important to keep track of which layer your objects are on. We're just going to leave this in layer 1 for now. So one of the most important tools in Inkscape is the selector tool. So you'll see here that this black arrow is already selected, as Inkscape automatically goes to this when you have no other tool selected, which is why when you click on the rectangle it gives you the option to resize and change the colour. So this first click, as you'll see, allows it to move around and allows the size to be changed. So I'm just going to drag this rectangle about to move it, and I can drag the arrows to make it bigger or smaller. You can also use the keyboard for this as well. So the arrow keys just move it by 2 pixels, left, right, up, down. You can also use Shift and the arrow keys to move it by 10 times this. Again, same directions. And you can use the more than or less than symbols to scale down or scale up. And then Control and the more than or less than to go by half the size or to double it again. Now if you click on this a second time with your mouse, you will see that it takes you to the rotation and the skew. So you can use these curved arrows at the corners to rotate it, or you can skew the shape using the ones in the centre here. Just like so. And again, you can use your keyboard here. If you use your square brackets, this will rotate it by 15 degrees. And if you use Shift and your square brackets, it will rotate it by 90 degrees. Just like so. Also, if you want to do all 4 of these commands 1 pixel, if you need extreme accuracy, instead of using Shift or Command or Control in front of them, you're going to use Alt. So you'll see here, I've got Alt on the keyboard, Alt on the less than and more than symbols, and Alt on the square brackets, and it's all moving it pixel by pixel. And don't forget, you can use Command-Z to undo anything you've done. So what we're going to do next is we're going to create a second layer, and we're going to add all of our horizontal pieces. So you'll see here we've got one in the middle, we've got a black line, and we have 2 red lines. So I'm going to go up here and add layer 2 above current, so that all my objects will go on top of this grey box. There we go. And then I'm going to select a colour from the bottom, so a darker grey for this first central rectangle. And I'm going to press R again for my rectangle tool, and just click and drag across to create the shape. There we go. I'm going to escape and then click again to drag it where I want it. Let's do there. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my black. A bit thinner this time. There we go. Now for this red one, we have 2 separate pieces. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to draw the leftmost red line using the rectangle tool. Now, a really important tool we're going to use here is Control D. So we're going to click here and press Control D, and what this does is duplicates the object. So you'll see that when I move this around, a second one's been created. So that's the identical shape and size. There we go. I'm just going to adjust these a little bit using the arrows to create a bigger gap. And an important tool we're going to use here is the alignment tool. So what we're going to do is to select more than one object, you press Shift and then click your desired objects. So Shift, I'm going to click the first one and click the second one. Note here, if you wanted to select everything in the one layer, you can just use Control A, like so. But we don't want that, so I'm just going to go back and use Shift. So I'm going to Shift click, and this time don't let go of Shift, but press Control A immediately after, and this will open the Align and Distribute tab. So what we're going to do here is just check that these two red bars are in the same line as each other. So see here, I'm just checking the top edge and the bottom edge are both aligned. There we go. And we now see these are both perfectly in line with each other. Now if we go back to our reference photo, we can see here that our grey bar has got a white circle and two more grey circles on either side. So to add this, instead of using the rectangle tool, we're going to use the circle tool this time. So I'm going to pick a much lighter grey colour, and you can either click on the circle or you can press E. I'm going to draw myself a wee circle here. Again, don't worry about the sizing, we'll fix this later. And I'm going to drag this into the centre. Shrink that down. And I'm going to create a layer called layer 3. And I'm going to add my circle to layer 3. So that this will always lie on top of my rectangles from layer 2. Here we go. And I'm going to use Control C to copy this, and then Control V to paste. You could use Control D here as well to duplicate. There we go. Just going to drag this down here. And drag this here. So again, we're going to use the alignment tool to make sure these are in line with each other. So I'm going to Shift and click all three dots, and then go to my Align and Distribute tab, and make sure the top and bottom edge are all in line. And then what I'm going to do as well is make sure that these are actually symmetrical in line with the shape of the rectangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the grey horizontal rectangle underneath it, and I'm going to select all three dots. And this time when I go to my tab, I'm going to change the relative to first selected, and then I'm going to change the distribution to be equal on left and right. So see now that this is perfectly centred with the rectangle. Now this grey rectangle with the three dots is not going to change through the rest of the drawing, as we want it to be one object. So what we're going to do is something called rubber banding here, which is very important in Inkscape. So firstly, I'm going to go to layer 1 and I'm going to lock it. So this just means that layer 1 doesn't move about when I'm trying to edit, which is quite annoying. So this will no longer shift while I'm working. And what I'm going to do is make sure I'm selected no other tools, and I'm going to click and drag this black box so that it encloses my grey horizontal rectangle and my three dots, and then let go. And you'll see that it has now selected all four of these objects. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Control G, and you'll see that when I click off and click on, this has now become one object. So I can undo this if I use Control U. I'm just turn this back into a group again. And this is now one object. And you'll see as well, this is all part of layer 3. So it has taken the grey horizontal up from layer 2 into layer 3 here. This is a very useful technique for the rest of our drawing. You'll see in the next video, we're going to use this to create multiple pinholes. And this can be used to create lots of different complex shapes within Inkscape. So that's all for part 1 of this tutorial. In the next part, we'll be going over how to make the pinholes, add text, and create the resistor in between. Thanks so much for watching.